I am very pleased to introduce you to our third and last speakers, but I do see Angelica, but I don't see Teresa, Cristina, Teresa. No, it's just you, Angelica, at the moment, or both of you will be presenting. It's fine. So you or you both will be presenting on semantic truth and pragmatic deception, perspectives on misinformation. So floors to you, Angelica.
Thank you so much, Fabrizio. I have to say, I'm sorry, my throat is a little bad today, but let's see. Well, good afternoon. I'm Angelica Andersen, and I'm honored to be here today to share some of my research with Professor Teresa Wachowicz that we developed at the Federal University of Paraná in Brazil. I'd like to thank CAPES and CNPq Foment agencies for sponsoring my research. So this work will soon be published at Helin, and it examines how misinformation exploits properties of human cognition and language, particularly in digital environments. Our analysis bridges linguistic theory, cognitive science, and communication studies to understand why misleading content thrives online despite our evolutionary safeguards against deception. Our presentation today will follow this structure. First, we frame misinformation as both a cognitive and linguistic challenge. Then, we explore theoretical frameworks related with language evolution and their implications for manipulation. After that, we discuss epistemic vigilance, our cognitive safeguards against deception. Then, we analyze how misinformation bypasses these safeguards. Next, we present some linguistic analysis of 5 linguistic mechanisms in deceptive content. And then finally, we discuss implications for research and intervention strategies. The dissemination of misinformation is a complex phenomenon that has been amplified by digital platforms. As these technological tools have become ubiquitous, they've created unprecedented opportunities for the spread of misleading, false, or distorted information. The central question guiding our analysis is, why does misleading content prosper online? We hypothesize that social media architectures take advantage of universal features of human cognition and language. In particular, we have found that certain linguistic structures bypass our natural mechanisms of epistemic vigilance. Our objective is twofold: analyze cognitive and communicative properties and identify specific linguistic phenomena that enable informational manipulation. This creates a paradox. Digital environments offer content abundance, yet their textual structures reveal semantics with little reference or specificity, resulting in a scarcity of relevant information. To understand our vulnerability to misinformation, we first considered how language evolved. To do so, we examined 2 main theoretical perspectives. The rationalist view, championed by Chomsky, proposes that language emerged suddenly through genetic mutation, creating an internal system for structured thought, with communication being a secondary adaptation or as acceptation. In contrast, a more functionalist perspective, represented by Rebut, suggests that language was externalized from thought to meet social survival needs. Critically, both theories recognize the manipulative potential of language, either as a byproduct of our complex cognitive architecture or as an adaptive feature for social influence. These evolutionary foundations help explain why we remain vulnerable to misinformation despite our sophisticated cognitive capacities. Delving deeper into these evolutionary perspectives reveals why we are susceptible to misinformation. Chomsky's theory suggests that the emergence of the merge operation, that is, our ability to recursively combine words and phrases, created unprecedented cognitive capabilities, but also vulnerability to elaborate narratives that diverge from reality. Hebou's manipulative hypothesis proposes that externalized language enabled persuasion and strategic games for personal gain, however, limited by group survival goals. Boyd Richardson suggests that Machiavellian intelligence and epistemic vigilance co-evolved in an arms race between deception and its detection. The convergence of these perspectives suggests that our susceptibility to misinformation has deep evolutionary roots in both our cognitive architecture and the social strategic function of communication. As language evolved, so did protective mechanisms against deception. Sperber and colleagues developed the concept of epistemic vigilance, cognitive and social mechanisms designed to monitor information reliability. Unlike blind trust or distrust, vigilance involves critical assessment at three levels: the communicator's competence, her honesty or benevolence, and the plausibility of the information itself. These mechanisms evolved to detect deception, compensate for our cognitive limitations, facilitate social coordination based on reliable information, optimize knowledge accumulation, and efficiently allocate cognitive resources. Essentially, epistemic vigilance evolved as an adaptation to protect individuals and social groups against the dangers of unverified communication. Recent theoretical developments have refined our understanding of vigilance. Sperber and Messier's argumentative theory of reasoning proposes that rationality evolved for argumentation and persuasive communication, while vigilance works as a defense against detrimental manipulation. However, Schieber recently challenged this view, arguing that we are not actually very good at evaluating relevant epistemic qualities like honesty or competence. Instead, he proposes that our vigilance primarily serves social purposes. That is, we evolved to monitor status signals in others to maintain or improve our own status. Our hypothesis, however, is that epistemic and social vigilance are interrelated and likely co-evolved in humans. Modern information environments probably favor the Machiavellian aspect due to the interaction between our evolutionary cognitive profile and the rapid social and technological changes we face. Now I'm going to pass on to Professor Teresa if she is able to access the microphone, because then she's going to explain some linguistic phenomena that we have identified. Is she in the room or?
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. I don't know. If we pay attention to linguistic phenomena or strategies, we have an infinity of grammatical, lexical, synthetic, semantic facts that could support misinformation. We choose here only 5 strategies or facts, né? So that relate to rhetoric and semantic data. The first one, emotional language and dramatic narratives. The second one, repetition, ad hominem attacks, vagueness and genericity, and conspiracy theories, okay? So the first one, the emotional language is the recourse is to make some some texts that are empty of ethos and pathos expressions. Here we have the first one person, I, and a direct question, but who cares, that bring the pathos to text. And and also, furthermore, we have also a lot of uses of figure speaking in the last line, for example, the maximal altar of historical glorification. That here we have a hyperbole figure. Here we have the phenomenon of repetition. We really have a kind of here we really have a kind of truth reading neutralization. So if we repeat the verbs, the expressions in these texts, we have another recourse that make truth value sentence more accessible. The third one, the hominem ethics by rhetorical theories, okay? We have an argumentative context in which proper names are hidden. In this example, a lot of bare plurals also seems to indeterminate noun semantics. In this, in the phenomenon of vagueness and genericity, the construction is mainly studied inside noun phrases. For example, the proper noun here in this text don't have an institutional index, okay, or affiliation. And also bare nouns, bare plurals, doctors, and enormous number of people seem not have referential indexation. The last one, the phenomenon here, concerns conspiracy theories. As we can see at Silvio Mato's video or text, strong and negative and aggressive expression are used, okay? We see this in Persecuted by Communist Side of History and Intellectual Cowardice.
Well, then some technological factors also influence misinformation spread. Communication conveys implicit content beyond its literal meaning, allowing indirect speech acts to bypass truth conditions. For example, a social media post stating climate has always changed naturally throughout Earth's history may be technically true, but it misleads by implying human influence is neglectable. Moreover, social media lacks contextual cues that help interpretation, such as facial expressions, voice tone, and shared physical space. Beyond that, algorithm prioritization of engagement over accuracy creates feedback loops that reward emotionally charged content, regardless of its veracity. Finally, anonymity leads to reduced accountability that lower the social costs of spreading misinformation. These strategies contribute to bypassing vigilance and create information bubbles where the same views echo repeatedly, reinforcing existing beliefs while limiting exposure to diverse perspectives, which leads to intellectual isolation and polarized worldviews. Our study has some important implications. Misinformation is not simply a problem of individual irrationality or technological design, but rather exploits deep-seated cognitive and linguistic traits that evolved over millennia. Effective solutions must therefore address multiple dimensions simultaneously. Media literacy to strengthen epistemic vigilance, platform design and regulation to reduce algorithmic amplification of misleading content, and linguistic safeguards to highlight vague or emotionally manipulative language. Our ultimate goal should not be to eliminate dishonesty because it's really an impossible task, but to foster good faith communication oriented towards collective understanding. Future research should examine cross-cultural patterns of misinformation, test cognitive interventions to strengthen vigilance, and develop automated detection of linguistic markers of deception. So, in conclusion, misinformation thrives by exploiting a paradox of language evolution. The same capacities that enable complex thought create vulnerabilities to deception, and the same social needs that drove cooperation enable manipulation. Digital environments amplify these traits by removing contextual safeguards, rewarding emotional over factual content, and facilitating repetition at an unprecedented scale. Addressing misinformation requires to acknowledge these cognitive linguistic aspects rather than assuming purely rational information processing. The challenge ahead lies in redesigning our information ecosystems with awareness of these fundamental aspects, creating environments that support rather than subvert our vigilance. Here we have some references, and I thank you for your attention together with Professor Teresa. We are both open to your questions.
Thank you, Angelica and Teresa. Thank you for the lovely talk. I can see some applauding, and I hope there's questions from the floor as well. Do you have any comments, feedback, questions for our two speakers? I'm sure they'd be more than happy to answer your queries. We do have about 10 minutes, 8 minutes. No questions? Wow. No, I've got one question. I was thinking, you said this is part of a broader project that you've undergone. You're carrying out at the moment. I mean, what's its major purpose? Is it much broader in scope, or are you looking at this issue only, let's say specifically on this?
Well, I'm going to start and then maybe Teka can take on. Yes, it is part of a broader project that started some years ago with identifying markers of deception. So I have worked in some other studies, and right now what we are trying to do is to highlight aspects, linguistic aspects that turn misinformation relevant. And because there are not really that many studies using relevance theory, that is to say, some people working with computational aspects, they are trying to identify simple words. And the problem is they don't take under consideration, the context and how it becomes relevant. And what we are doing, we are trying to bring together cognitive science and linguistics to take these things under consideration. Otherwise, you end up flagging content that is not really misinformation and not flagging content that is misinformation. But in broader terms, what we realized is that addressing only one aspect like linguistic markers alone is not enough, because what we need to do is work in terms of the platforms, which is very difficult. Europe, I have to congratulate because it has pioneered some laws to address this problem, and you can see that it resulted in a lot of kind of European hatred, against, because saying, okay, they are, like hunting us and X
Yeah,
and Elon
deception
Musk and everything.
detection tools. Yeah.
Yeah, but also in terms of education. So what we are trying to bring about is all these things together, because also, trying to develop epistemic vigilance in people, it has been proven very interesting, because then people themselves can flag out. And this doesn't only apply to misinformation, it applies to other kinds of online communication. We saw in the other talks, if you pay attention, some of the things I mentioned, they also mentioned, like this emotional language and these appeals, this emptiness in terms of content. So if people are really trained to identify these things, then we can have some really good results. So what we are doing in terms of bigger project is bringing about all these cognitive science, linguistics, and some technological aspects to tackle the problem from different perspectives, because it has been proven that tackling from only one perspective is not enough.
No, it's a very fascinating area of study. And I know that cross-linguistic research examines how this type of deception varies across different languages and cultures, highlighting potential universal tendencies and language-specific or culture-specific nuances in deceptive communication. Do you have anything specific about Brazilian Portuguese that you've highlighted in your research that might differ from?
Well, I have second-hand data, from Oxford, that they researched 72 countries to try to observe. Yes, the study is not even, it is not from this year. They were doing this project every year for 4 years in a row, and I think they ran out of budget this year. They didn't show it, but just for you to have an idea, Brazilians are the one country in the world where people spend the most time in social media.
Wow.
And also, there is a lot of production of deceptive content, and it is unfortunately a country where people try to be fooled, but it has, again, an association of spending far too much time on social media, together with a enormous production of not only misinformation, but also these sites that, want to take money from your bank account and all that. And there are some countries where this doesn't happen so often, but there's always a connection in terms of design of the social medias, time spent in social media, and the kind of regulation that countries are bringing about on these platforms.
Well, I'm sure Vanessa will be happy, so she'll be swamped by memes that she can analyze if Brazilians are so, big users of social media. But I've got a question from Fabio. Sorry, I was getting off track.
I want to
sorry.
say that the linguistic phenomena are always universal. And so we have the genericity structure, generic structures and vague structure that exist in all languages. So all languages can
Cross-linguistic,
bring
yeah.
this information to us.
Thank you. So sorry, Fabio, I was getting off track.
Thank you very much. It's very kind to review Angelica and Teresa, né? My question has to do with the investment, the cognitive investment Angelica Andersen has done in work with the sites who capture the misinformation, evaluate and etc. My question has to do with what is how do you evaluate nowadays the whole of these sites to evaluate misinformation precisely because Brazil has these characteristics?
Yeah, I just have to go back because Teka said something really important that I missed when I answered the question. Because actually, if you take the linguistic part, all these markers, they are present in all languages. And then if you just purely translate the what kind of material you find, you're gonna find these same linguistic markers. But in terms of the battle against misinformation, it's always like 2 steps ahead, and unfortunately, this time like 3 steps back. Because during the pandemic, there was a huge effort because it was such a serious problem. So, like Facebook and other social media, they tried to invest, in fact check and flagging things. But as we had some political world changes, they actually took some steps back, and they took out all this. And also because as a way to give back to the population, they invested in researches, and they basically took out all the investment in this area. So actually, some people that are heavily involved in this are almost being persecuted at the moment, as we can see in other areas of knowledge and academia. So, nevertheless, the cognitive studies and the linguistic studies are moving forward due to resilience of researchers. So we understand more and more, so we can more and more propose other forms to help the population, to bring about in schools more training. So in some areas we are really moving forward, but we depend heavily on governments to back this kind of research up.
Thank you, Angelica. Thank you, Teresa. If there's no other questions for our speakers, I would like to, big applauses from the whole floor. I joined them. I would like to thank all the participants and the speakers from this session, and we've got